is TurnOneThoughtseize. I'm Ahren.
And I'm Chris.
Today we are talking about PPTQs and the results thereof. We are talking about Grixis again, for obvious reasons, Jund, Twin, and we are talking about the promised Green-Black Elves brews. We have a couple variations. Chris came up with a version, I came up with a version. They are similar but different.
Yeah.
And that is what we're talking about today, and a couple of listener comments and questions that came in through Twitter before we started recording. PPTQ this weekend. Both of us played in the same PPTQ, and we ended up with the same record, which was 3-3 with one bye. So yeah, why don't you talk about what you played, and then I will talk about the fan choice and how it fared and how we're going to fix it.
Right. So I had a bad tournament. I thought I still am confident that the deck I played is good. I ended up playing a combination of Grixis Twin and Grixis Control. It's a version of Grixis Twin that only runs 8 combo cards, 5 creatures, and 3 Splinter Twins. And I really like this version because it's mostly the Grixis Control deck. It doesn't spend so many cards on the combo that you forfeit good reaction cards, right, and you get a higher density of counter spells and kill spells. Even that 2 cards really does matter, but it also does have the emergency button of I need to win the game now.
Right.
So it was a nice balance, and I think it's a good deck. The problems with it, the weakness of the deck is because it's halfway between Twin and Control, it is the worst deck in the Grixis mirror because it's not controlling enough against Control, and it's not as fast as the combo against the combo. And so it doesn't favor well against either.
Right.
And as it turned out, there was a lot of Grixis at this particular PPTQ.
Yes. So I took a sort of informal survey of whom was playing what, and the room was at least 40% Grixis. It may have even been more than that.
So I think it was 40% Grixis, but more than half blue-red. There was also
definitely
a large number of just plain blue-red twin decks as well.
Right.
Now, there was some variety therein. There was some Grixis Twin, there was Grixis Delver, there was Grixis Control. So for this tournament, Grixis Control was probably the best Grixis deck to play because it does a lot better in the mirrors, does better against Delver if you board correctly, which I should probably get to at some point, because So my actual matchups playing Grixis Twin were against Grixis in round 1, Grixis in round 2, Blue-Red Twin in round 3, and then Jund. So 4 grindy matchups, of which the most time I had on the clock at the end of the round was 10 minutes. And that was not fun.
Yes. I had the opposite problem, which we will get to.
Game 1 of round 2 took 35 minutes in the actual mirror match, which was Grixis Twin versus Grixis Twin. And it came down to the fact that he had a Snapcaster in hand and drew another Snapcaster to just flashback 2 bolts.
That will do it.
Right, yeah. We were both low. He was at 2, I was at 6, and he was dead next turn, except for Snapcaster Bolt You, Snapcaster Bolt You. And then that wasn't it, too, because he end-stepped bolted me, and that's how I got to 6. And then he just drew the Snapcaster and was like, Snapcaster Bolt, Snapcaster Bolt. So the first thing we learned is that the way that you beat the mirror in these Grixis versus Grixis and Grixis versus Twin decks is Bolt. Lightning Bolt is the best card in the matchup, and that might sound weird, but it is absolutely true. It's not particularly close, and that's how you win the game. Beyond that, Jund was super grindy, but it's okay. And then I played the worst matchup for Grixis, which is Coco, which we will talk about more later. I do think the deck is good. I think it is very good. I think up against an open field, it's one of the best you can be playing. The problem is, like I said, it's not very good in the mirror because you're kind of in between strategies. And so if you're more confident or you're expecting a lot of Grixis, you might want to go the control route instead. Some things that actually helped this, though, and made it a little bit easier for the couple Grixis and Twin decks I did play to get a couple wins through, I boarded 3 Fulminator Mages, which is traditionally done by the Grixis control deck and not the Grixis Twin deck. And I also played 2 copies of Vampiric Link, which were very good, but I didn't get to show it that much because I didn't play against Burn.
Yep.
I was expecting a lot of Burn, Goblins, and aggro. So Vampiric Link is a common from Time Spiral or Planar Chaos.
Yep.
A common from Planar Chaos that is incredibly hard to come across now.
Yes.
It is a single black enchantment where you get to enchant a creature, and whenever that creature deals damage, you gain that much life. So it is not lifelink, but it is the same text as lifelink.
Right. And
the bigger thing is, it doesn't have to be a creature you control. Now, this card's great because up against aggro decks, you get to put it on Tasigur or Gurmag Angler or something and just gain a bunch of life, and that's great. The better thing is, too, up against a burn deck, you can put it on their Eidolon of the Great Revel, and just all your spells no longer do damage to you, and all of theirs are doing damage to them and gaining you life.
Yep.
So it's better than Dragon's Claws for a couple reasons. 1, it only costs 1 mana. 2, it actually gains you more life, because when they bolt you instead of Dragon's Claw making you gain a life, you're going to take 3, they're going to take 2, and then Eidolon is going to gain you 2 life.
Right.
So you only really took 1 in the exchange, and they took 2, so it wrecks the burn deck
Yep.
completely. So that card's great. Fulminator Mage, I really liked because I could bring it in against the control decks and the twin decks, which might sound strange, but they turn into control decks post-board, the twin decks.
Right.
So you definitely bring in Fulminator Mage against control decks. It's very, very good, and just playing it on time on turn 3, if it resolves, means they don't get to combo off. And actually doesn't even have to resolve. Because if they're sitting on 3 mana and you're on the draw and you go to your turn and you play your 3rd land, you go Fulminator Mage, they either counter it, which means they don't get to flash into Deceiver Exarch, or it happens and they do flash into Deceiver Exarch and you Fulminator Mage one of their lands and they don't have the mana to cast Splinter Twin.
Right.
So even just Fulminator Mage on the draw is very good against Twin. Plus they're playing a more controlling route, and you don't really have to worry about the combo as much. It also comes in against Jund and Abzan, and it's very strong there too. So I wanted it because it was good against mid-range decks, it was good against control decks. So I would recommend running both of those cards in your sideboards if you're running Grixis. Other than that, I think that's all the valuable lessons.
How many dispels did you have?
So I ran into a problem where I really did like Dispel, but I wish it was a different counterspell a lot of times. I ran 2 in the main deck and none in the side.
Okay.
If I were to redo it, I'm not quite sure. I guess I'd probably only run 1 main and the rest in the board and bring them in when I want them.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and even playing against, like, the first 3 rounds were against Blue-Red X decks, and it still did not perform as good as I wanted. Like, it was fine, but it was just fine. I would probably keep 1 and board the rest.
Because that seems like it would be a leg up in the Coco match. Where you just basically always hold up 1 blue.
No, Coco is so miserable as it is, because if all you're doing is trying to counter a Collected Company, Raman's just as good, because they'll just keep trying to jam it turn after turn. Coco's just a bad matchup in general because they outvalue you so much, and you're trying to 1-for-1 them and you can't, because so many of their threats either don't die from 1 spell or they're casting Collected Company and getting 2 spells. So I don't know. I think it actually was worse in the Coco matchup. Like, I was very unimpressed because a lot of times they didn't need to cast Collected Company.
Right.
They just needed to do Kitchen Finks and Anafenza and Gavany Township. Like, Gavany Township was huge, and you can't really combat it very well.
Unless you have Fulminator Mage.
That is another thing.
and then you shank them.
I don't know if I boarded in Fulminator Mage in that matchup because they're not mid-rangey enough. I'm trying to think. I think I just like went for... Oh no, that matchup, I think I kept the combo in because it was like my only hope of actually winning the game. Like, they can just get so far ahead of you. I just actually took out Cryptics and like a Remander 2 for more removal stuff, like Languish, Anger the Gods. That was another thing I should have mentioned. I ran 1 Languish in the board, and absolutely yes. Sometimes you do want Damnation, but up against the decks that are playing Tassigers and Siege Rhinos and whatnot, you're not really bringing in sweepers. You're bringing in your mid-range cards like Fulminator Mages and extra Terminates and stuff, right, and extra Kolaghan's commands. So Damnation not being in the board I was fine with. The Languish being in the board where you really want it in the aggro matchups anyway, it was fine, and it hit everything it needed to, and it hits most of the stuff in Zoo,
right,
which is really important. Like, it hits Luxon Smiter, and it will hit most Knight of the Reliquaries. So I think I had a 2-1 split between Anger the Gods and Languish, and I think I would run that again.
Yeah. Well, it's right, like, and most likely an on-curve Knight of the Reliquary is going to be 4/4. There's such a weird divide between like 3 toughness, 4 toughness, and then 5 toughness is like a different arena of creatures.
Right. Even now, it's so rare to see 5 toughness creatures. It's basically just Gurmag Angler, Tassiger, Tarmogoyf, and Siege Rhino, which is seeing less and less play.
Yeah. It's not... it's still really good, and I think it will, I'm sure, see... So whatever is pushing it out, which I think is Terminate, probably.
And Kolaghan's Command, I think.
And Kolaghan's Command. When those things sort of shift out, which they eventually will, like, right... There's this ebb and flow where something will come in and put pressure on a certain strategy or a certain card, and then people will respond to that by playing oppositely, it's not really a word, playing cards or strategies that make the cards that are under pressure, or the cards that are applying pressure, less valuable, and then slowly it'll shift the other way because people will adapt to that, and then back and forth. So I wouldn't count Siege Rhino out forever, but in a world where almost everybody is blue-red something or black-red something, and there's just Terminates all over the place, it's a losing proposition to tap out on turn 4 to basically drain your opponent for 4 mana, and then just immediately have the thing terminated.
Right. Getting a 4 mana Lightning Helix in junk colors and then making them discard a Terminate is not good enough for 4 mana.
Yeah. So like I said, he'll be back. He'll be back on top someday, but that day is not right now.
Right. And 5 toughness is always super awkward because how the decks can take care of it if they need to. Like, worst case scenario, Snapcaster Bolt deck can do exactly that.
Right.
Like, flash in Snapcaster, block the Siege Rhino, bolt the Siege Rhino. Like, it's not the best use of cards, but if that's what's going to keep the blue-red player alive, or if they're on Twin and they just need to live for a turn or two, if they're just like digging for one combo piece, it's not the worst, and they'll do it, and then a couple turns later they'll combo and win. So at the moment, yeah.
So that's that. Were there any cards that you wish you had or wish you had more of?
I only ran 2 Blood Moons in the board, and I'm trying to remember if that was correct. I only ran 2 because I was running the Fulminator Mages,
right,
and I felt that was fine. I didn't see any Bloom Titan players.
Nope.
So
everybody, I actually asked the the game store we were at because I lucked into finding a Nourishing Shoal in a bulk bin at a convention, so I paid 25 cents for it, and I was like, somebody wants this for $14. The buy list is only a couple dollars. So I hung on to it for a little while to see if anybody wanted to trade for it, and everyone locally is getting out of that deck because they assume, hopefully rightly, that some key piece of it is going to get banned before the Pro Tour, because nobody wants to watch Grixis brand. Like, if people want to watch decks like that, they can watch Legacy events and hope that not everybody's playing Miracles.
Right, which everyone is, which is a problem.
Well,
it's a problem.
That's a whole other issue.
It is, but so on that note, though, it's kind of strange how that works, right? Because if people aren't playing the deck because they know it's going to get banned, WotC has no number evidence to ban the deck, and so it doesn't get banned. So what happens? Like, are they just going to ban it on an assumption? Or are they going to wait for tournament results? Because in their rules, and everyone likes to quote the turn 4 rule, most of the cards on there violate more than one rule.
Right.
They're either too oppressive, like they have numbers to back it up, and then there's the turn 4 rule, and then there's the coverage rule. Like, Sensei's Divining Top could be oppressive, and it's a coverage rule issue.
Right.
So most of the cards on the ban list are on there for more than one reason. Just a deck being a little fast is not usually enough of a reason, because every deck has their nut draws. It needs to be consistently winning before turn 4. And it's really close. It probably should be banned. It's just, I don't know if WotC will ban it if they don't have the numbers to support the decision. I hope they do, but it's another consideration.
Yeah, so that was that, and I said, so I didn't see any, and with everyone locally, trying to trade out of it or buy a list out of it, I don't anticipate it being an issue going forward. Plus, Colligan's command puts a ton of pressure on it, and it's just,
yep,
it had its minute. And that minute is over.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't,
or at least in our area. I'm sure that there's some hell on earth out there where people just like love playing Bloomtite mirror matches.
That seems like an awful mirror match, like in every way.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible.
But
it's not unlike the Splinter Twin mirror match.
The Splinter Twin mirror match is at least fun to play. Like, there are interactions. Like, that's one thing I can say. Like, as draining as it was, everything was tiny exchanges, which I do enjoy. Like, as much as Grixis is normally control colors, and we call it Grixis control, it plays very similar to a mid-range deck, which is a topic we're going to talk about in a little bit. And just to go back to the other question that you asked, things I wish I had more of. Looking back, I only actually registered one discard card, which is one of like the draws 2 black. I felt like I didn't need it, and after playing so much Grixis, I guess I would redo that. Like, I ran 4 Wraths in the board, 2 Anger, the Languish, and then 1 Engineered Explosives. And as much as I wish I could cut a Wrath, I probably can't. And I already ran the 2 Karanos for the control mirror.
Right.
But I feel like I wish I had more discard in there somewhere.
I always feel like that.
Well, sure, like a little bit. But just having 1 Thoughtseize was probably not enough. It probably could have been 2 or 3 slots. That's another thing. I probably wouldn't have been upset if my 2 main deck dispels was like 1 dispel and 1 main deck discard.
Okay.
And then another discard and a dispel in the board. Okay. And then I get to switch those out. That's just one of the tiny flex slots that you get to play with in control decks. Right. So I feel like that'd be good. Other than that, like I said, I think the deck was very good. It wasn't good for that day. If you're going to a big tournament, it's very good. Just be more prepared for the mirror match than I was.
So we had espoused the double Karanos. Did you get to board into that at all? And if so, how did it perform?
I did board into double Karanos in, well, at least 3 rounds, 4 rounds probably. Like, almost every round was boarding into it, because post board, most of the time you're boarding into a control deck, and Keranos is your finisher. So I did it a lot, and it was fine. It was very powerful. I'm glad it wasn't Batterskull, which was my concern before. It was almost an Olivia Voldaren, but I also decided against that. So I think 2 Keranos is actually correct right now. Because it always was just Keranos and Batterskull, and now Batterskull's not that great, so adding a second Keranos just makes sense.
Right.
There was one awkward draw where I had 2, and suddenly I discarded it, and my opponent was like, what? And then I tried to make it make sense because I wanted to kill something and do something else. So I was like, I'll Kolaghan's command your thing and return Keranos to my hand. And we'll just pretend I don't have a second Keranos in my hand, and eventually we'll hit 5 lands. That was also the interesting thing. In not everyone, but it seemed like post-board it happened a lot, where me and the opposing control deck would just be so land light. I remember against even my straight blue-red twin opponent, in game 2, we sat on 3 lands apiece for 5 or 6 turns.
Ooh.
And we just stared at each other, and there were times where we'd almost make a move where it'd be Flash and Deceiver Exarch. I'm that probably shouldn't happen. Even if you're just trying to and that was actually on time where I didn't notice he didn't have the land drop yet. I was just I should probably counter that, so I did. And then next turn he didn't drop a land. We're just that's what we're doing. That's how this match is gonna go.
There's your Drago control.
Yep.
Just don't have land.
Just don't have lands. You draw and say go.
So I played Goblins by popular demand, which was totally fine. The Goblins list that I played was as follows: 4 Foundry Street Denizen, 4 Bushwhacker, 4 Goblin Guide, 4 Legion Loyalist, 4 Pile Drivers, my super secret tech, 3 Sting Scourgers, which, if you are like everyone at the entire tournament and have no idea what he is a 2/2 Goblin Warrior for 1 and a red. He is Echo, 3 and a red. And when Sting Scourger enters the battlefield, return target creature and opponent controls to its owner's hand. And then 3 Goblin Rabble-Masters, 4 Goblin Grenades, 4 Lightning Bolts, 3 Blood Moons, 3 Shared Animosity, 20 lands. And the sideboard was 2 Magma Spray, 2 Rending Volley, 4 Shattering Spree, 2 Spellskite, 4 Dismember, and 1 Goblin King. Which actually I don't think got registered. I think that Goblin King became something else.
Okay.
So that was what I went in with. And my first round was Grixis Twin, and I lost 2-0. My second round was Grixis Twin, and I lost 2-0. And
I think that was Blue-Red Twin, because I played him round 3.
Oh, that could be. So, here's the thing about Goblins and main deck Blood Moon. There's so much cheap removal in Modern that even if you are playing multiple goblins per turn, it's not enough to get you to the point where you are attacking with enough of them to make a difference. And because everything that you have is a 1-for-1, and individually the goblins are not good, you can just you get outvalued by everything. You get outvalued by Disfigure. You get outvalued, they don't even have to spend a high value card like a Lightning Bolt on any of your creatures. So you just go, you put your thing out, they go Disfigure. You put your next thing out and they go whatever, anything, literally anything. So I had a lot of problems just sort of getting a board presence. The Blood Moon, when it did come out, was never relevant. I played actually played 5 rounds, and I boarded it out in every game because it was either I was playing against somebody that already had mountains, or had their own blood moons that they were bringing in post board, and already had enough basics and fetches that they were playing around blood moons so hard anyways because they knew they were going to get hosed by it, that it was a dead card in every single match. So main deck blood moon is not good. It's just not. So do not make that mistake. I made it for you approximately 15 times, and it did not work for me in any of those cases. Unless you know that everybody else is playing Tron, and even then, if it's red-green Tron, you're still not in super great shape. The other things that I really, really noticed, Goblin Bushwhacker is not good enough. He is not a good 1-drop because he's a vanilla 1/1, and he is not powerful enough to be a 2-drop where you kick him and your creatures get +1 in haste. He just doesn't... He never got there for me.
Well, it's weird because a lot of other people that have played the deck love Bushwhacker because it pushes through damage. Is this an instance where it only really works? It seems to me like it's good, but only after you hit 4 lands. So you get to play a goblin. Like, I guess the dream seems like Goblin Piledriver, Goblin Bushwhacker kicked.
Sure.
But then I guess the question is that good enough?
I didn't think so.
Okay, and also going back to the thing with, I guess what you're saying is with all the cheap removal, cards that rely on you already having a critical mass weren't the ones getting it done.
Yeah, I was having a lot of trouble keeping guys on the board. So Goblin Guide, obviously is great. I mean, there's no... I would ramp my opponent a little bit, not really a big deal. Legion Loyalist is amazing. Battalion is a huge deal because that Legion Loyalist is really the thing that pushes through damage because he gives them trample and first strike. First strike is so big in this deck because you are normally throwing stuff that's 2 power, 3 power maybe out on the field, and the ability to the ability to profitably trade with other people's common 1 and 3 drops maybe. Like, it doesn't really trade with Tarmogoyf, but non-Tarmogoyf 1, 2, 3 drops oftentimes will be able to match up favorably, or a high-powered goblin with first strike will be able to match up favorably against it. And it also forces your opponent to either consider taking the damage, to not, say, trade with a mana dork and still take 2. So it puts them up against a choice that's not great really either way. So Legion Loyalist is real deal 100%. Piledriver is good. I don't want to get anybody confused by what I am about to say. Goblin Piledriver is an exceptional card. Goblin Piledriver alone is a terrible card. Goblin Piledriver with a board full of goblins, even 2 other goblins, makes him really good. 1 other goblin is kind of good, but you really, once you've got 3 guys attacking, you're in pretty good shape. Sting Scourger did a huge amount of work for me, like MVP, because it does something that red shouldn't be allowed to do, which is bounce creatures for 2 mana. I would go against like single creature strategies. I played a guy who was on Eternal Command in round 5, and he was sort of like getting his board set up, and he slams his 4/5 Tarmogoyf, and I was like, oh, bummer. Sting Scourger, bounce your Tarmogoyf, hit you for 8. really good. So I would 10 out of 10 would play again, and will play again. The other surprise disappointment for me was Goblin Rabblemaster. I honestly think in this deck, so the decks that I've played him in, and I love the card. I think it's amazing. In this deck that doesn't have any way to protect him, he really doesn't do the business. Because what ends up happening is you may have a couple goblins on the board, you tap out on turn 3 to play him, and then you move to combat, they bolt him, or whatever, they kill him, and you spent 3 mana for a goblin token with haste.
Well, you probably wouldn't even get it, because before combat, they'll kill it if they can.
Sure.
I think the big thing is so many of the goblins with 2 toughness and Kolaghan's Command being big.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they can Kolaghan's Command either Pile Driver or your Lords or Rabblemaster is what's huge, because they're not even skipping a beat at that point.
Yeah.
It's beyond a 1-for-1. They're killing your creature and then something else, whether it's getting the creature back or making you discard a thing, because you discarding creatures is also bad.
Right.
So I think Kolaghan's Command is really a thing that can keep the deck down.
Things that were very good. Goblin Grenade is very good.
Yeah.
I'll get into like some specific stuff from the matches, but I was able to close out a game with double Goblin Grenade, and that is rare. It is rare to be able to take an opponent from 10-0 with 2 red mana.
Yep.
Lightning Bolt obviously does what it does and does it well. Blood Moons I already talked about. Shared Animosity is good. Asterisk. Shared Animosity is oftentimes a win more, because for it to be good, for it to be worth paying 3 mana, you already have to have a board full of creatures. And if you have a board full of creatures, it means your opponent doesn't have answers to all the creatures that you're playing, and you're already in good shape. I don't know if I would continue to play with Shared Animosity. I'm actually, and I'll get to this in the updated version, but I think there's other things that could be in that slot that are potentially more helpful, because it's just like, it's the same thing, right? Like, you cast it on turn 3, or even if you cast it on turn 5, your opponent has had 5 turns of like chipping away at your guys. So even if you do slam this, if you slam it with 2 guys on the board, it's terrible.
Right. So this card's really interesting. I think it's very good because the thing about goblins is it's kind of like the goblin mentality. The deck reflects the goblin mentality lore-wise. Like, you just kind of go for it right now.
Right.
And I think that's what Shared Animosity really reflects. The fact that your opponent doesn't have the removal right now when Shared Animosity is good doesn't stop the fact that they might have the removal next turn. So you need to play Shared Animosity now with, like let's say you just have like turn 1 Foundry Street Denizen, turn 2 Loyalist Guide, right? You get 3
Sure.
goblins, good curve. The curve topper being Shared Animosity. Like, let's say you're on the play game 2, and they haven't killed your creatures yet because they're just going to anger the gods next turn.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of that Shared Animosity, you're playing something else that doesn't get an extra 6 damage in. Might be a mistake.
Okay.
So it depends how you look at it. I really liked a diversity of the 3-drops, because I think the 3-drops are the things that really need to basically say I win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Goblin Guide is what will finish the game. Like, burning your opponent out, don't expect to have creatures past turn 4.
Yeah.
You need to just burn them out. And I think Shared Animosity gets the early damage in but that is a slot. Like your 3 drops, your turn 3 play is what needs to get your opponent low enough so you can't just burn them out.
Right.
So I do actually remember a deck last season before Goblin Piledriver. This Goblin deck actually made it to the finals of the PPTQ, where it lost to Affinity. Was basically burn goblins.
Yep.
Instead of a lot of the Lord effects, it ran lava spikes and a couple other burn spells to use the goblins to get those blistering fast starts and then burn off your opponent from 10 to 0.
Yep.
So that might be another interesting take, but I don't know. So you had other cards to slot into that win slot?
Yeah, I think so. So it ran 20 lands. I think that was fine. I did often find myself wanting a way to do something with those lands. Like I would consider, it's not in the updated build, but I would consider Molten Vortex if you're going to continue to run 20 lands, because there are certainly times where you're just like, oh, I have 3 mountains in my hand and nothing to do with them. So if you could discard that and, shock somebody, it seems good. Sideboard wise, I boarded into Spellskite so often that it really probably should just be main deck, because it fills that role. Like, it does the duty of protecting, it does the job of protecting your quarterback, because the quarterback is often Piledriver or Rabble Master. So that guy needs to live. Everybody else can die after their attack triggers go on the stack. Right. It doesn't matter. You just need that guy to live. So I would consider, much in the same way that some Merfolk decks will main deck 2 Spellskites, I don't think that's an incorrect choice. It may not be in every deck in every meta, but I don't think you would be sad to run it. I will say, so round 1, Grixis Twin, game 1 against Twin, unless your opponent has some sort of catastrophic medical issue, you're going to lose that game. You might as well be playing with blank slips of paper. I mean, nothing that you have matches up favorably, other than the fact that Piledriver has protection from blue, so he can't be blocked by Deceiver Exarch or Snapcaster.
Snapcaster's the worst, because Snapcaster trades.
So, that is the only silver lining, is that one of your guys comes stock with Pro Blue. Game 2, 2 Rending Volleys and 2 Spellskites and 4 Dismembers was not enough. It just...
Well, that also dilutes the deck so much, too.
So I did have 2 rounds against different Twin opponents where I got them to 1, and then they comboed off the next turn. And that made me really sad.
Yeah.
It made me hate Twin more. But it's not their fault. They picked a good deck that follows the rules, and it is what it is. My good matchup, surprisingly, was Burn.
Yep.
It was very much, as you can imagine, a matter of who was on the play. So game 1, he was on the play, I lost. Game 2, I was on the play, I won. Game 3, he was on the play, but I had double Goblin Grenade, so I won.
It's real good. Burn spells do more.
Yeah, exactly. It was all of my high quality burn spells. We were at parity for lightning bolts, and then he played an Eidolon, and I just waited. And then once he got to 10, I was like, oh, okay. Goblin Grenade, you're dead.
Yep.
So Eidolon, not great in every matchup. that then round 4 I had a bye, which is still a win. So the fact that my opponent didn't show up, it should in no way make that match seem less dramatic than it was. I believe I got us lunch.
You did. I was grateful because I was in another control mirror.
Right. Round 5 was Eternal Command. The deck is just too fast. Between the number of creatures that I was able to lay out and like the early damage, by the time he stuck something, I just bounced it with Sting Scourger and then killed him.
Okay, I was hoping that I tried to use context clues to figure out what deck you were talking about. I was like, I hope you're talking about your deck, because there's Eternal Command is one of the slowest decks in the format.
Yes.
Like, if it gets to late game, it's very hard for it to lose.
Sure.
Like, it almost can't, but it has to get to late game first.
Yeah. So going into the last round, I was 3-2.
Okay.
And so this was my last opportunity to achieve a non-zero number of the biscuits. So I would have, had I won this match, I would have gotten 6 packs. I would have basically gotten my entry fee back and validated spending 7 hours, like mostly bashing my head against the wall because this deck can't be twin. So I sit down, and of course, he is playing twin. So game 1 was fairly close because he drew his twin fairly late, and we had a couple of like I had a judge call because while we were playing, he picked a card up out of his lap, and I didn't see him drop it. So what ended up happening is that it did fall out of his hand, but I called a judge because there was at least something on the line, and I wasn't a jerk about it. I was just like, I didn't see the card fall, and you picked a card up out of your lap, so that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, a little bit.
So that turned out fine. The second round was one of the heartbreakers, where I got him 2-1, and then he comboed off, and I went 3-3, which was not enough points for anything except sadness. So I was like, all right, cool. But I took the hit, I spent the day, and the updated list...
I actually had a question. Before going over your updated list...
Yes, sir.
Before you ran this deck, just talking about it, did you consider any splash colors? And do you want to talk about that real quick?
Sure. So, when we were bouncing back and forth, we talked about white splash. I think I did sort of like pilot versions of like a splash of everything, like just to see like what does the white splash look like, what does the black splash look like. So the white splash gets you Boros Charm, which potentially could have been big game because it makes your creatures indestructible. So that I would consider heavily, plus it improves your sideboard like 1,000 times.
Oh yeah.
So that would be something to consider. The black splash gets you Terminate, potentially huge. It gets you Discard, and it also gets you Spike Jester, which is 1 black, 1 red for 3/1 Goblin with haste. So that's also something to consider. The blue splash wasn't really appealing. It gets you like cheap counter spells. Like you basically would get you like Dispel to keep them off of instant speed removal, and except Abrupt Decay, which your entire deck dies to Abrupt Decay, which is tough.
I guess Spell Pierce works in that spot too.
Spell Pierce,
it stops the wraths for a little bit, which is huge.
So figure it gets you Spell Pierce. It may get you, or Muddle the Mixture. I mean, granted, it wouldn't do it on turn 1, but it would.
Isn't Muddle 2?
It's 2.
I don't know if you can handle 2 blue, can you?
No, I mean, fetches and it's possible because you don't have any double red.
Sure.
So it's possible. I don't know if it's good, but it's possible. And then it gets you card draw, which would be nice. Because certainly, like any aggro burn style deck, like running short on cards is like death knell. Just forget it. Like once you run out of gas, you're pretty much done. So blue card draw would have been something. So green gets you a lot potentially. Green gets you Coco, which is sort of like the first thought. The thing about Coco with Goblins is the reason that Coco and Elves works so well is because all of the Elves synergize with all of the Elves no matter what. So there's never going to be like a dorky Coco casting in an Elf deck because any of the Elves is good. Some of the Elves are better, but all of the Elves baseline are good. Like they all do something that is worth spending 4 mana to cast this spell to get 2 of them onto the board. Right. That probably is not the case with Goblins.
Well, it helps you rebuild though.
Sure. I mean it you spend 4 mana. I don't know that you're going to get paid back in the same way because oftentimes like in the original build it runs so many 1-drops. Like there's 12 1-drops. Actually there might even be more than that. I have the other one pulled up.
Right, but it's the putting the 2 creatures in play that make your other cards better. Like it lets you the fact that if your problem is all of the removal, getting more creatures in play at the same time is after they wrath, you collected company and you have some sort of board presence.
Sure. So there's in that list the original list runs 16 1-drops. So I guess spending 4 mana to get 2 1-drops into play doesn't seem like as good a proposition because that is often what's going to happen.
Right, but then doing that and untapping and going like Legion Loyalist Shared Animosity is probably game over. Or it gets you in a point where Bolt and Goblin Grenade is enough. I think the other huge thing for it's better if you're running green. You also have a Tarkus command, so you can collect a company and get the 2 1-drops and maybe play a third 1-drop and then a Tarkus command to push through damage.
Yeah, I mean it is good. Like I think it's of all the possible tribal decks that could include collected company, it is probably the least good in this particular one. Because I think those slots being something like Desperate Ritual will do basically the same thing. Because then you get to cast 3 1-drops for 2 mana.
And then get wrathed.
Sure. But I mean that's the same thing could happen with Collected Company.
Not end of turn. That's what I was saying. Like they wrath end of turn Collected Company.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't test it. I wanted to keep it mono red.
Yeah, I did lightly, and then after defending Collected Company for the past couple of minutes, I have to say it's not really worth it.
Yeah.
The green splash was not as good. For one thing, you never drew 4 mana unless you were doing very poorly anyway.
Right.
And you're in such a hole that Collected Company is not going to dig you out of it. And by the time you do hit 4 mana, your opponent is either ahead, has counter spells, or has enough removal.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people were excited for it, but
yeah, I didn't see it. So the changes that I made based on my play were as follows. 4 Foundry Street Denizen, 4 Goblin Guide, 4 Legion Loyalist, all stars. Foundry Street Denizen as a turn 1 play is tremendous. It is better than turn 1 Goblin Guide. Just straight up. Because you still get 4 damage, but as the game goes on, you end up ahead.
Right, yeah. If you're looking at your opening hand and you see Foundry Street and Goblin Guide, and you have the choice, you play Foundry Street first. Right. Is the thing.
It's like Experiment 1 and Zoo, where like it's counterintuitive to play Experiment 1 before you play Wild Nicodle, but it's the correct play.
Yep. Even in the Naya Blitz versions that run Goblin Guide and Experiment 1, like you said, even though it may seem counterintuitive, you absolutely play Experiment 1 first, and then next turn Goblin Guide.
Legion Loyalist Battalion, getting that Battalion trigger is so important that in one of my matches against the Burn player, I had Foundry Street Denizen, a Legion Loyalist, and a Spellskite on the board. And in order to get the Battalion trigger, I actually swung with the Spellskite as well, so there would be 3 creatures attacking. And he looked at the board and looked at me, and he said, "You totally just next leveled me by attacking with that Spellskite." So that was a small victory, and that followed by the big victory because I did beat him. 4 Goblin Pile Drivers, because he really is one of the best cards in the deck. Like he is a single card win con potentially. Like, so he's definitely worth running 4 of. I added Mardu Scout in the 2-drop slot, so he fills the 3 power role that you would have gotten from Spike Jester, which is a very playable card, but obviously in mono red. The other very important thing about Mardu Scout is normally as the game goes on, Foundry Street Denizen gets less good once your board is stable and you're not necessarily adding creatures every turn. If you're not on the tokens plan with like Monk War Marshal or something like that, eventually Foundry Street Denizen kind of like falls off in quality. Mardu Scout allows you to trigger him every turn by dashing out Mardu Scout. So it takes his 3 power and basically turns it into 5 power. So I really, really think that Mardu Scout belongs in here as a 4 of. And even just straight up as a 3/1 is great. Yep. Because you attack with him, having that Battalion trigger, to give him trample, like a 3 power creature with trample is very, very real.
Right.
3 Sting Scourgers, they're just too good. It is the element of surprise to have a bounce effect, and in the later game, if you can pay the echo cost, which is high, it's 4, but if you don't have anything else to do with your mana, you can keep him on the field as just a 2/2 goblin, and that's fine.
Yep.
I mean, I put in 3 Goblin Kings. Goblin King in this tournament would have won me multiple games, because, and even if he just gave them Mountain Walk, didn't give them +1/+1, I would have won. I would have at least had an even up shot against the Grixis guys. There were certainly matches that I lost because it was just turn 3 Flash and Deceiver X or turn 4 Punishment. It's like, okay, well, no matter what I did, I was going to lose that game. It's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but what are you going to do? With the Goblin King allowing all of my creatures to apply unblockable pressure every turn, turning everything into a must-answer threat is huge game. So I'm fully on board with Goblin King over Goblin Chieftain. Chieftain is better in like super going wide token strategies, but I think in this particular build, which is more like getting the most quality out of each of your creatures, I think Goblin King is definitely better. The other thing that I put in here is Pyrewild Shaman. So Pyrewild Shaman does double duty. If you need him to be, he can be a 3/1 for 3, which is not great. He has Blood Rush, so basically he's like a Gorklan Rampager. His Blood Rush is 1 and a red. Discard Pyrewild Shaman. Target attacking creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn. And whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, if Pyrewild Shaman is in your graveyard, you may pay 3, and if you do, return him to your hand. So he's a recurring combat trick, kind of, but once again, having something that adds 3 power when your creatures get trampled from Battalion or when they have Mountain Walk. I mean, he's basically, at that point, a lightning bolt tacked onto any creature that you have that's swinging in with Mountain Walk.
Right.
And being able to bring him back in longer games where you're able to maybe run out their removal early on, and you just have 1 or 2 guys left and you're trying to punch through the rest of that damage. Having Pyrewild Shaman and 4 lands in play, or even 3 lands in play, being able to just recycle him every other turn,
yep,
I think is really good. Still runs 4 Goblin Grenades. Even though it's sorcery speed, 5 damage is a huge amount of damage. Like we've talked about this before, there are not a lot of cards that will just smash somebody in the face for 5.
Yep.
So run 4 all day long. 4 bolts, obviously. This version still has the shared animosity. I think it is vastly superior in this build because of the evasion from Goblin King. Because then even 2 or 3 attacking, like even 3 attacking creatures, let's say, becomes you probably a 2-turn clock at most.
Well, right away it's 6 extra damage your opponent didn't know about.
Right.
That doesn't die to creature removal.
And then because it's a little heavier on like the 3 drops, I put in 21 land instead of 20, and that seems to work well. So that is the version that I will continue to test and bring back data about. Some of the other cards that I am trying are Pyrite Spellbomb, just so you can kill Cork Firewalkers, basically is what it's for. Collateral Damage, which is basically it's 1 red, sack a creature, does 3 damage to a creature or player. It's just, in this deck, it's bolt 5 through 8.
Yep.
Which could sometimes be relevant. Ember Hauler, as a different 2-drop. He's a 2/2 for 2 with an upside, which is very rare for goblins.
Yep.
His text is pay 1 colorless, sacrifice him. He deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So, block with him, sack him, shock somebody, kill their creature, or whatever. The other card that I'm looking at for this deck is Browbeat as a 2-of. So Browbeat is a time spiral sorcery. It was part of a cycle of like Punisher cards where your opponent could basically your opponent gets to choose either I think they were all pay 5 life or something happens. Like there's Dash Hopes is 2 black for a counterspell unless your opponent pays 5 life.
Yep.
So Browbeat is 2 and a red. Any player may have Browbeat deal 5 damage to him or her. If no one does, target player draws 3 cards. These cards normally aren't good enough to see play because they give your opponent a choice, and your opponent is always going to choose whatever option is better for them. So let's say you're playing Dash Hopes, your opponent's on Splinter Twin, they cast Splinter Twin, you cast Dash Hopes, and they have the option of either letting you counter Splinter Twin or pay 5 life. Well, they're going to pay 5 life, combo off, and kill you. So it doesn't gain you anything to have that. The only time that I've seen or conjectured of these types of cards being playable is in a deck like this where you're always threatening 5 damage in chunks, to say to your opponent, take 5 or give me 3 cards. Neither of those options is good, because they can take 5 and then get Goblin Grenaded and die, or they can give you 3 cards and you can cast more goblins, burn them out, or do whatever. Like, you just refill your hand and use those cards hopefully to win.
Right. It's not a good spot as an opponent, because you have to decide, are those 3 cards going to do more than 5 damage?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then you take the 5, and if not, well, you'll find out.
Yep. And if you're already at 10, because for 3 mana, like, obviously you can play this on turn 3, but even if you play it a little bit later than that, where they're at 7, if they're at 8, they've got a huge choice to make, because paying 5 life will put them in bolt range. So that is somewhere that they don't want to be.
Right. I think the best time to cast this is when you have 2 cards in hand, Browbeat and Goblin Grenade.
Right.
And they're just like, man, I really don't want them to draw 3 cards because their hand's almost empty. How bad could it get? I'll pay 5 life.
Right.
And then die.
Goblin Grenade, you lose.
Yeah.
So I really, like I said, I really like this card in this particular deck.
Right.
I wouldn't go out and be like, oh man, I'm going to double down on Browbeat, because sometimes it's going to be pretty bad.
Right.
But and if you do get them, you get the Time Spiraler ones or the old ones, because they have this really sweet Mark Tedden art, and the newer ones that they were reprinted in the Sorin versus Tybalt dual deck, and the art is not as good. So that's that. I also just really like Browbeat. So this list has a flex slot with Pyrowild Shaman, so I would swap those out even in the 3 slot, or like, I guess Pyrowild Shaman technically is 2-drop, but I'm gonna give both of them a shot and see how they work. I have still all the cards obviously to play the deck. The other thing that I'm going to be testing in the Shared Animosity slot is Hall of Triumph and Obelisk of Erd. I don't know that they're necessarily better. They certainly work on a different axis. I think with the Mountain Walk, even if you board into Blood Moon, the Mountain Walk obviously is really good. You don't need the Shared Animosity punch as much. Right. And just a straight up, because both of those things also give a toughness bump, it makes them a little more resilient to a board wipe. Like, I got blown up by a Pyroclasm. If I had had an Obelisk of Erd in play, I would not have gotten blown out by a Pyroclasm.
I mean, half the deck gets blown up by, like, Trickery. Like,
sure.
Hall of Triumph. No, like, I'm saying, like, in defense of Hall of Triumph, I don't think Obelisk of Erd quite does it, because you're never going to cast it for 6 mana.
Sure.
You need to convoke your creatures, and I feel like any turn that you're not turning goblins sideways, you're just losing.
Could be.
So I feel like Hall of Triumph is definitely something that should be slotted exactly for that reason. Like, not having Pile Driver and Rabble Master die to Pyroclasm is pretty huge, or your Lords.
Yeah.
So
Hall of Triumph is a definite possibility. I wish it wasn't legendary, but it's legendary because otherwise it would be really good. Now it's just kind of good.
Yeah.
So that's Goblins. I made those mistakes, so you didn't have to. It is just one of many services that we provide. So, Grixis, Jund, Twin. We both got beat up pretty bad by them. What do we do? How do we fix that?
Right.
How do we not lose to Grixis, Jund, and Twin?
So when you look at it, all three of the decks, although very different and winning in different ways, all want to accomplish the same thing, and that's infinitely 1-for-1 you until they win, and they'll eke as much value out of every card as possible and try to jam as many built-in 2-for-1s as possible to get more value out of their cards. And so everything, their 60 cards are going to be more powerful than your 60 cards, and then they win the game. And that's what makes the strategy so potent. And I really do think that access to Kolaghan's command is what pushed these strategies over the top, because it is a built-in 2-for-1 in a deck that just wants to 1-for-1 you until they win. So giving them that access is helping a lot. In addition, red and black provide discard, burn, and endgame reach in the form of burn, and also just unconditional kill spells, which is everything the Grixis color combination wants, and it's everything Jund wants. Right. Just being able to kill opposing Tarmogoyfs and Tassigurs and Deceiver Exarchs and everything else. So even though they're all different and people want to combat one or two of these decks, some strategies actually combat them all at once. And those are ones that are built with not being 2-for-1 in mind, or rather making your opponent 2-for-1 themselves. Yep. So you need threats that are more resilient. The two best ones that I can think of are Voice of Resurgence and Kitchen Finks, which conveniently both share the same colors and can go in the same decks. And if you jam 6 to 8 of these in the same deck, you're already ahead of your Jund or Grixis opponent, because they can't bolt a Voice of Resurgence and have it be done. They can't bolt a Kitchen Finks and have it be done. They have to spend 2 cards to deal with your 1 card while you keep playing more threats. Right. The same thing can be said for Collected Company. I think with Jund and Grixis and Twin as big as they are, Collected Company decks just get very, very good. And I think Collected Company is really where to be if you're expecting a lot of these decks in your metagame. And different color combinations also enable you to be very well prepared for all of the linear combo strategies as well. Like, your main deck's already very good against Grixis and Jund, and then you shore it up in the board with a few slots, and the rest of your slots go to all of the linear combo decks. And you have a ton of good answers in a lot of colors. So Zoo is the primary tier 1 spiky example, I think. I think Zoo gets better in this metagame. We've talked about it before. I haven't gotten to test Big Zoo recently, so I'll talk about it at some point in the future. Not going to delve into a lot today. But the new Zoo variants of Big Zoo with 4 Neither Reliquaries, 4 Luxodon Smiters, and I think the biggest change is actually 4 basic lands, which probably doesn't seem like a lot, but in a Wild Nacatl deck it kind of is. So that's actually super important, because now the deck doesn't die to Blood Moon, right, which was actually a problem, and it also doesn't run a lot of red stuff. It actually only splashes red for Wild Nacatl and Lightning Bolt, and then sideboard cards. So I think that version with Collected Company and all of these aggressively costed creatures is very, very good right now.
Woolly Thoktar.
Oh, man. I don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. I mean, value, but
Yeah, super value.
at least you can collect a company into it.
Exactly. Collected company into two of those, 10 power on the board for 4 mana at instant speed.
All right, we're already getting into tangents, but so there is like I don't think it's a cycle, but it's actually it might be a cycle of the shards.
It was shard colors.
Each shard got a 3 mana 3 color creature.
Yep.
Because I know Bant has one too that's like ridiculous. It's like green, white, blue for a 3/4 with lifelink, which you can just collected company into. That's nuts.
Yep.
Woolly Thoktar as well, like a big beater that you can collect a company into. Like, they're all a big deal. And so Zoo, like I said, is you kind of like your spiky tier 1 example. The cool thing about collected company though is you get to have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
I posted something on our Facebook earlier of a 5-color allies deck, which I will probably put together since like the $20 of creatures and Razor Verge tickets seems worth it.
Yeah.
So at some point I will, but I already have a deck together that I got to test, which is the Superion Bant Coco.
Yes.
Which is a ton of fun.
Super
and
good.
So you do start with, the reason I like it right now is because you have I think my list is 3 Voice of Resurgence, 3 Kitchen Finks, 4 Noble Hierarchs, 2 Birds of Paradise, and I think that might be it for the general castable creatures. And I know that probably sounds weird, but the reason is because there are a lot of creatures you can't really cast normally.
Right.
There are, I believe I settled on 11 fatty creatures.
Right. So it's Mir Superion.
Yeah, so there's 4 Mir Superion, at least in my build, 4 Mir Superion, 4 Talaris Battalion, and 3 Scab Ruinators.
Yep.
All of which you grab with Collected Company, all of which technically can be cast in this deck, but most of the time you're Collected Company into them. My value creatures is 1 Spellskite into Eternal Witness.
Sure.
Just for extra value.
Eternal Witness with Collected Company.
Good stuff.
Super good.
I mean, even just getting back Voice of Resurgence was huge. Like,
yep.
Actually playing Eternal Witness right now in itself is very good because once again, it's an anti-2-for-1.
Yep.
They killed your creature, you play Eternal Witness, get that creature back and play that creature. You spent 2 cards and they need to spend 3 cards to get rid of everything.
Yep.
So up against Jund and Grixis control especially, Eternal Witness is very good. I actually started running an Eternal Witness in my Jund list. Just 1 main deck Eternal Witness. It breaks apart the mirror match. It's so strange to me how that happens, but this deck also runs Aether Vial because everything is so compact in you just want to like leave it on 2 for a while, and Vial and Superion and Talaris Battalion, even instant speed Kitchen Finks are okay sometimes, or instant speed Spellskite was not irrelevant. Like,
yep,
it's pretty cool.
Bring them in, pay 2 life, save your whatever.
Yep, exactly. Or take your Splinter Twin.
Yeah.
And you can't counter it at all. So that's pretty cool. And so the only blue card, if you're paying attention, is Scab Ruinator in the main deck.
So good.
The mana base is so great. Most of the time I'm fetching basics. Like, the deck runs 7 basic lands. It's very Blood Moon proof. It only runs 1 island, which is mostly for aesthetic purposes. Because you can't actually cast Scab Ruinator against a Blood Moon in the deck.
I'm fine with it.
But I'm fine with it too. You really just want Collected Company, so 4 forests and 2 plains, and then a bunch of other lands. I will post this list up. And then 4 Path to Exile is your only main deck interaction, but it's all you need.
It's fine.
Because you just need to, like, if they have 1 big creature, you path the big creature, you don't care about the land, and you get to swing with Mer Superion and Talaris Battalion for 9. Talaris Battalion, which is a 4/3 with built-in trample, is super good. So, like I said, everything can be cast. Mir Superion is a 5/6 for 2 colorless that can only be cast with mana from creatures. Sometimes you have 2 mana dorks.
Yep.
And that's okay. This actually, surprisingly...
He's a great turn 3 play.
He is a great turn 3 play. I mean, I've had instances where I was able to, like, even sometimes where it makes your vial better too.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can always turn one vial, and then when turn one vial happens, you put it on 1, and you get to play a normal 2-drop, and then vial in a mana dork, and then next turn you put it to 2, and you get to play, like, kitchen, even on 2 lands. Now you get to cast Kitchen Finks after casting Voice of Resurgence and get Mer Superion into play. The board states this deck makes out of nowhere is just, it's proactive enough where you're good against the linear aggro strategies because they have to stop you from swinging with 5/6s.
Yep.
And the board plan is really flexible too. Right now I'm working with 3 Leyline of Sanctities, 3 Stony Silence, and 3 Stubborn Denial. Stubborn Denial, also really good in this deck. 2 extra spell skites, because sometimes you really want them. And I found that 3 was pretty much the correct number, and not spending another sideboard slot on it seemed fine to go up to 4. I think 3's fine. 2 Rest in Peace, because you don't care too much about your graveyard. Like, it hurts Eternal Witness, it hurts Kitchen Finks, but most of the time that's worth it if you're not dying to your opponent. So Rest in Peace is very good. And I also really like Frozen Grip right now.
Oh, K-Grip's so good.
K-Grip is really good. It costs 3, but it doesn't matter. It's just as good. Like, you don't get Abrupt Decay in this deck, so you might as well run a Frozen Grip. It's this on time, the same as Abrupt Decay, like if that's what you need to hold it up for. And with Vial, a lot of times you can hold it up, because you can have Vial and be vialing out your Mer Superion while holding up K-Grip mana, and so you're doing something proactive and stopping your twin opponent. So I think Frozen Grip's great. So I had a lot of fun with this deck. I actually got to test it a surprising amount, and it's great. I'm a big fan. It's a lot of fun. So if you're looking to have fun and you're expecting to play lots of Grixis and Jund, I think it's a good choice. And then there was one, I think we had actually just today we had some back and forth on it. What I called Cocoa Pebbles.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, because it's a rock deck, but it's a tiny rock deck, and it runs Collected Company, so it's definitely a deck that deserves Cocoa Pebbles. And it kind of takes a little bit away from Wilt Leaf Liege, Obzon, and the pod decks and junk decks. Like, it's trying to be a little disruptive while also advancing your game plan and beating down, and also just eke a lot of value out of every card. And so because of this actually probably plays with one of my favorite cards from Origins, Evolutionary Leap, as well as Collected Company.
Evolutionary Leap.
And it's kind of funny. So this started as a Coco deck with Door in the Siege Tower and a bunch of these big beaters for less, like 3 mana or less, a bunch of really good just Obzon colored creatures. And then it was like, alright, so I have like 4 paths and 2 Abrupt Decays, but I don't want all this interaction. I need more creatures. So I cut that down, and then I tried, like I needed a 60th card, so I was like, let's try Evolutionary Leap. And I did it. And then it was like, okay, well, this is really good. Let's try 2. And then it went to 4. And 4 is the correct number.
Yeah.
4 is absolutely the correct number. Like, the deck almost feels like it doesn't do anything unless you draw Evolutionary Leap or Collected Company, but between the 8 copies of them, you almost always have them. And the deck's fine without it. So just going down the list, 4 Noble Hierarchs. I slotted in Tarmogoyfs. This deck might be fine with Scavenging Oozes.
Okay.
Because it does eat, like, Graveyard Hate right now is actually really big, and if you can eat your opponent's spells in response to a Snapcaster, it's super huge. So I put Tarmogoyf as a big beater. Scavenging Ooze might be okay if you're looking for a budget concern. I think it's very defensible.
Yeah.
Tidehouse Sculler as a 4 of, because I like that card a lot, and even you're not sad to Collected Company into a Tidehowler Sculler. Like, it's pretty great. And it's one of the best things, because all of this is happening like at your opponent's end step. So like, you're like Collected Company, and like, okay, sure, whatever, fine. And then you hit Tidehowler Sculler, and like the trigger goes on the stack, and sometimes they panic and kill it and don't realize what that means, the way that triggers work. and the fact that this is still broken, not like Brain Maggot.
Right.
If you kill it with Tidehollow Sculler's trigger on the stack, the second ability on Tidehollow Sculler will never have the opportunity to resolve because it goes on the stack first. So the way the triggered abilities work is, because they're two separate abilities, Tidehollow Sculler says, when it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand, you choose a non-land card from it and exile it. And then there's an entirely second ability that says, when Tidehollow Sculler leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to its owner's hand. So, collect a company into Sculler, trigger goes on the stack, they bolt Sculler, second trigger goes on the stack, second trigger resolves, no card can be returned to the hand because none was taken. First ability resolves, you exile a card from their hand, and it's gone forever. I used to play this card a lot, and that happened a surprisingly large amount of time, and I feel like it would only happen more if everything's happening at instant speed, like your opponent's end step, like collect a company, hit Tidehollow Sculler. So I like that. Like I said, Voice of Resurgence, huge, 3 of in this deck. And then it goes on to the 3 drops, which are 2 Eternal Witness for value, Fleshbag Marauder for value, 3 Kitchen Finks because it's very good, 3 Liliana Heretical Healer, which is kind of the big deal. I'll finish it up with 4 Loxodon Smiters because it's very good, and then go back to Liliana. In this deck, it's great because you can go like turn 1 something. No, just fetch land into Shockland. It's fine. Don't do anything. You don't need to.
Yep.
Turn 2 Leap. Turn 3 Kitchen Finks.
Sure.
Gain 2 life.
Yep.
Turn 4 Liliana, leap the Kitchen Finks, get it back, gain 2 more life, flip Liliana, get a 2/2, and then either make everyone discard a card or something. Like, it doesn't matter. If it's not a Kitchen Finks and it's just going to die, you can just get it right back.
Yep.
Like, it's pretty great. There are even better interactions where after Liliana's already in play, you can, like, Fleshbag Marauder and then transform Liliana, get the 2/2 immediately, -3 Liliana, kill Liliana, bring Fleshbag Marauder back, make them sack a second creature. Like, you spend 6 mana to get a 2/2 and make your opponent sack 2 creatures.
Yep.
Seems fine.
Yes.
And if you want, you can even just sack the 2/2 and keep the 3/1.
Yep.
Like, they're both going to die to bolt anyway.
Sure.
So you might as well keep the 3-powered creature.
Yeah.
You can also... I also really like that you can sack the 2/2s to Evolutionary Leap. Like, if you're running low on gas and you already flip Liliana, like, let's say even worst case scenario, like, you flip Liliana, you got the 2/2, they immediately killed Liliana, you can still leap the token and just draw into a creature. So it's hard for Grixis to keep up with. The value engines in this deck are a little too much for one-for-one strategies like Jund and Grixis to deal with. So this is what I'm saying when I mean make your deck one-for-one proof.
Right.
Make them spend multiple cards to deal with everything. And
right. Because they have... Right, and we've talked about this before. They have 8 removal spells. They don't have 16 removal spells.
Right.
Because some of their removal they need for enchantment removal, just miscellaneous. So like if they're probably going, okay, well, I've got 4 abrupt decays, I've got 2
Terminates, 2 Kolaghan's Command, a Maelstrom Pulse, and 3 abrupt decays is like the normal for Jund right now.
Okay, sure. So that's what, 8 cards?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go.
Yep.
There's your 8 cards. If they're having to spend their abrupt decay getting rid of a Kitchen Finks or a Voice of Resurgence, they're not using that abrupt decay to get rid of Evolutionary Leap.
Right.
So they're and they don't have, like, unless they're one of the builds that's running Dark Confidant, they don't have enough card draw even to like try and go over the top of you.
Right. It's kind of weird. Like, so Jund has Dark Confidant,
Yep.
which slowly kills them.
Sure.
And every time they're killing your Evolutionary Leap, they're not killing your Liliana or your creatures, which
Yep.
are beating in.
Yep.
And so they die pretty quickly. with Grixis, every time they're casting Serum Visions, they're not casting Bolt.
Yeah.
Where they're not leaving enough mana up to counter your spells and kill your stuff when you're putting out 2 or 3 threats and drawing like 2 cards.
Yeah. So find a value train that you like and buy a ticket.
Buy Evolutionary Leap.
Buy Evolutionary Leap.
They're creeping up.
I know. It's funny, like, and this is just because I have an even number related like mental illness. I was at the store and I was like, "Do you guys have any Evolutionary Leaps?" And they're like, "Yeah, we have 3." And I was like, 3? It was like when I went to buy the Forbidden Orchards, and I was like, "How many Forbidden Orchards do you have?" And they're like, 3. And I was like, let me see if I can find another one somewhere else, and then I'll come back and buy those other 3, which is
one.
the most illogical thing that you can possibly do. But guilty as charged. I'm fine with it. But I think between that, which was yesterday, and today, the price of Evolutionary Leap has gone up like 50 cents.
I saw it over $4. I don't know what it was when you checked.
Yeah, it was like $8 yesterday, and it's like $9 today.
Did it go up that much? Wow.
Well, TCG.
Oh, okay. Well, that means the things that I normally check are like MTG price, MTG stocks, and they lag behind just a little bit, but they're a little bit more of an accurate picture, so I can... Wow.
Yep. Yeah, so... Oh, no, Star City has it for 5. So
I thought I saw
it. Must be less than that. Okay.
Okay. I
for some reason, I thought it was 8.
Well, it's weird because I think it pre-ordered really high when it was first spoiled.
Oh.
And then people were like, this isn't broken. And so it went down, and it's been going down. But, yeah, so I'm on MTG stocks right now, and the all-time high was $8.64 on July 3rd, the day it was spoiled.
Okay.
And so it's consistently over time actually gone down. It's just now it's starting to go back up.
Right.
Because people are like, hey, this doesn't have to be a combo card. It's just really good.
Right. Yeah. Not broken Survival of the Fittest, turns out, is still really good.
Yep.
So that's the takeaway is just value, build in as many 2-for-1s as you can and go from there.
Yep.
Just drown them in value.
Drown them in cocoa.
Speaking of that, just like my brain just like skipped a chain link. We talked about Green Black Elves and how amazing it's going to be someday last week, and we promised that we would come back with some brews, and we did. I'm going to talk about my brew first because you talked about Grixis. My brew is 4 Elvish Mystic, 4 Gnarlroot Trapper, 4 Heritage Druid, 4 Nettle Sentinel, 4 Bramblewood Paragon, 4 Dwynen's Elite, 4 Elvish Archdruid, 3 Imperious Perfect, 4 Shaman of the Pack, 3 Quarter Calling, 4 Collected Company, 18 lands, including 2 Nykthos, and then the sideboard is 1 Essence Warden, 1 Hurricane, 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Abrupt Decay, 1 Back to Nature, 2 Reclamation Sage, 1 Creeping Corrosion, and 1 Obelisk of Erd. So this deck functions, the core of the deck, like Elvish Mystic, Heritage Druid, Nettle Sentinel, Elvish Archdruid, Quarter Calling, Collected Company, like those are the core of basically any modern elf deck.
Yep. And
I think even every legacy elf deck.
I mean,
like pretty close.
Some things they have like strict upgrades over.
Sure.
But for the most part, yeah, they get another pseudo copy of Heritage Druid. There's a Ranger that untaps, or you tap 2 creatures to like bounce a land or make a mana or something.
Okay.
It's less creatures and less mana.
Okay. So the big thing that I wanted to focus on with my Green Black Elves was the Warrior synergy from Bramblewood Paragon. Nettle Sentinel is a warrior, so that's a 2/2 for 1. Bramblewood Paragon is obviously a warrior, which is a 2/2 for 2. Each other warrior creature you control comes into play with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. Dwinnen's Elite is we talked extensively about, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk extensively about because it's one of the best rate token producers
So good.
in the game. It's 2 mana for a 2/2 elf warrior that creates another 1/1 elf warrior as long as you control another elf. Elvish Archdruid is a lord who taps to add green to your mana pool for each elf you control. Imperious Perfect is an elf warrior. She's a 2/2 for 3. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1, and she also can tap 1 green tap, put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. And then Shaman of the Pack, which we've also talked about extensively and will likely continue to talk about extensively, is a 3/2 for 3, 1 black, 1 a black and a green. And when she enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. Court of Calling for Toolbox, Collected Company for value, and yeah, this deck can spit out a crazy number of extremely low cost, high value tramplers in a very, very short amount of time. Having like the Heritage Druid opening, having a Heritage Druid turn 1 and then Dwinnen's Elite turn 2 is like blow my brains out value.
You can even get it better with like turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 just play the Heritage Druid and the Elite both on turn 2 with the 3 mana, and then you can tap them and do this, then have the 3 mana as well.
Doesn't that still work though the other way?
Oh no, yeah, it still works. You're just getting extra power. Like there's multiple openings that work with Heritage Druid. I think one of the big takeaways. I know Heritage Druid is like the most expensive card in the deck by far.
Sure.
But I think it's completely necessary for the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to be able to be as explosive as possible, Heritage Druid is certainly the thing that's going to do that. It could, if you need a budget substitution, Devoted Druid is probably the closest because at least you can get 2 mana out of it.
Yeah, so it's not bad. The issue is you force yourself to not do it until turn 3.
Right. So it's it's a turn slower, but Devoted Druid is a 10-cent common from Shadowmoor. So,
right.
If you want to save yourself $40, $50 something,
closer to 80.
Oh God, that's painful.
Yeah.
Uncommon from Morningtide, but that's really the key, right? Like it's from Morningtide. Morningtide is an old set now.
Yeah.
And because it sees play in Legacy as well, like...
Right. It is so necessary in both decks.
Yeah. There's a lot of demand and a very fixed amount of supply.
Right.
I mean, even Nettle Sentinel, like, it was a common... Eventide common is like $3.
I'm waiting for it to keep going up. I've been sitting on my playset.
For like 6 years.
I mean, yeah, however long. I didn't even play elves back then. No, I built a budget elf deck for like $30 or $40 like a year ago.
Okay.
And then it jumped up a lot. Like,
Yep.
Yeah,
it was tier 2. Those days are long gone.
I mean, it was tier 1. And then it probably went to like tier 3.
Sure.
Because the old combo involved like going infinite with Yorga, Tree Caller, something, and Ant Queen. Makes infinite 1/1 ants.
Sure.
Like you can beckon call. It was beckon call elves. I bought into beckon call elves. And yeah.
That doesn't sound fun.
I mean, no, it was a blast to play, but Pyroclasm just made you lose. So, like, you couldn't beat Pyroclasm.
Yeah, and that's, like, considering, especially now, right, like, Grixis boards into Pyroclasm, Red Green Tron main decks Pyroclasm.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of Pyroclasms running around.
Right, you need a way to answer that.
And even Anger of the Gods, like, because people are trying to find an efficient way to fight, like, Kitchen Finks combo, Anger of the Gods is... Its stock has risen quite a bit.
Yep, and also, if you are in that boat where you're actually playing the Kitchen Finks and trying to beat Anger of the Gods, if you are running Court of Calling, Breton Forge Tender is the real deal. Like, being able to have them go Anger of the Gods and you chord for 1, get Breton Forge Tender, and then sack it to save your board, it's huge. Like, especially in the Anafenza Collected Company combo deck, have at least 1 Breton Forge Tender in the sideboard just so you can chord for it.
I like it. Technology section. So that was my green-black elves. Why don't you talk about your green-black elves?
Right. So I'm not going to go as in-depth. I'm just going to highlight a couple differences and a couple cards I think are super, super important. First of all, the core of my deck is mostly just trying to spit out a lot of elves and land 2 Shaman of the Packs, and that should be enough to win the game. Like, through the intermittent damage that you manage to get by, just chip away their life total, their mana base chips away their life total, and 2 Shaman of the Pack should be enough to just win you the game. There is a backup Craterhoof Behemoth as a one-of, and that's fine. Whether you draw it and Nykthos off, or whether you collect a company into it, a single Craterhoof has not been a problem in testing. If anything, it's just been it's a backup emergency button. Like, you need to win, so you do it. I also want to emphasize how important Gnarlroot Trapper is, because I think that was almost overlooked. So Gnarlroot Trapper is a mana dork. It pings you a little bit, but you don't really care too much. And furthermore, the threat of giving an attacking elf Death Touch is what helps you push through damage. Like, turn 1 Gnarlroot Trapper, and then turn 2 a Nettle Sentinel or 2, and being able to swing for 2 to 4 on turn 3 with Gnarlroot Trapper, especially with Nettle Sentinel, which is going to push through a couple extra damage, and then you're just going to untap them anyway when you cast the next green spell. Like, Gnarlroot Trapper's definitely the real deal. You should definitely try and play it if you're playing green-black, which I also think is correct.
Yeah.
You already touched on Dwin's Elite, which is one of the best adds to the deck. I don't think you ran... you didn't run Elvish Visionary.
No.
I chose to run Visionary because I really like it with a lot of the Heritage Druid openings. It really lets you use all your mana because you only have so many cards, and being able to go turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 Elite Heritage Druid, tap everything, Nettle Sentinel, Elvish Visionary, and putting that much stuff on the board and drawing a card means you're still in the game next turn. You put more stuff on the board.
Right.
So I actually liked Visionary. In this build, I think it's better just because you're only trying to chip away damage. You're not trying to win through combat.
Yep. You're
really trying to win. Like, the only time you win through combat is with Craterhoof. The rest of the time, you're just trying to get 4 Shaman of the Pact. Or a couple Shaman of the Pact. So I also ran 3 Archdruids instead of any of the other elves. The Lord feature of, like, giving everyone +1/+1 helps again with the pushing through a little bit of damage. And then 4 Shaman of the Pact with the 1 Craterhoof. My spells were 4 Collected Company and 3 Court of Calling. I believe you had the same for those. Chord is very good, but I didn't really want more than 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So I think running 4 is incorrect. 4 Collected Company is definitely very good, and that also grabs Shaman of the Pack, so I went with 3 chords. The main difference is because I'm trying to get a bunch of elves in play and keep them in play, I'm running 3 Prowess of the Fair, which is a 2-mana tribal elf enchantment. That's whenever a non-token elf is put into your graveyard from play, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. I was surprised you weren't playing this as a token producer with Bramblewood Paragon. since your other elves dying make more warriors, which come in as 2/2s, like 2 mana investment for a ton of 2/2 tokens seems really good.
I'm trying to remember what I cut it for. Oh, you know what I cut it for was Imperious Perfect. I cut it for more lords and basically like a live quote unquote token producer.
Right. Yep. No, that's fair. So Prowess of the Fair helps against Pyroclasm. It does not help against Anger of the Gods, which is a real consideration. But I do think it's good because, once again, it makes it less hurtful for you to attack into a bunch of blockers. Like, if they have a Tarmogoyf and you want to swing with 5 1/1s and a couple 2/2s, and they block your 2/2, and you just get a 1/1 to replace it, and you got in for 5 instead of 7, that's probably fine in this deck.
Yeah.
Because the important thing is you kept the same number of creatures, which lets you chord into Shaman, which is basically how you're winning the game. Goblins have Goblin Grenade, this deck has Shaman in the pack. That's basically the logic I went with. I treated Shaman in the pack as Goblin Grenades, and we just need to make up the other 6 to 7 damage that you need to do to get them to 10.
Yep.
So, I was also surprised with Nykthos. I'm only running 2. I don't think I want 4. I think this was fine.
Yeah, I don't know. Other than like a monocolored devotion deck, I don't know of any deck that really wants 4 Nykthos.
But this deck is very close to mono.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, like the only black cards for my deck are Naru Trapper, Prowess of the Fair, and Shaman of the Pact.
Yeah.
And most of the time you want to chord into Shaman anyway, so that's fine. My sideboard is for Abrupt Decay because I didn't finish the sideboard. But it probably has a non-zero number of Thoughtseizes and something for Graveyard Hate.
Yeah, my guess is that once you, like after game 1, you can decide whether or not Prowess of the Fair is going to be an advantage. And if it's not, just swap it out for discard.
Yep.
Because then the only thing that you're worried about is spot removal. Encounters.
Right.
Both of those things can be taken from Thoughtseize.
Right. If I'm playing against, let's say, a Junk deck or an Abzan deck, I definitely don't need Prowess of the Fair and I bring in discard because I think that's better because I can take removal spells when I need to, or I can take things like Siege Rhino and Tarmogoyf when I need to. So that's one example of that. So I think the deck's really flexible. I just wanted it to be as consistent as possible. The sideboard with Court of Calling can be treated like a toolbox. I did not include a toolbox main deck because game 1 I just want to win as decisively as possible.
Yep.
But in the board, having a toolbox between Reclamation Sage and everything else that you can chord for is huge.
There's a ton of them too. Like there's a Ren's Run Vanquisher, which is a 3/3 Death Touch for 2 that makes you reveal an elf card from your hand or pay 3, but like it's a 3/3 for 2. Like Talar's Battalion, same thing. 4/3 Trample for 2, and then even like as you go up the chain into more expensive stuff, like because you have Heritage Druid, you can go higher if you need to.
Yeah.
There's a lord up at the tippy top at like 5 mana. It's like 3 a black and a green, and it's Nath of the Gilt Leaf. He is a 4/4 legendary elf warrior for 3 a black and a green. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target opponent discard a card at random. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior token into play. In this deck, getting to 5 mana is never going to be a problem, and that is another like really solid like hand control aspect that you could work into. There's a ton of like just good elves.
Yeah, I'm mostly looking for the toolbox sideboard aspect too.
Essence Warden,
right?
Like against burn,
huge,
very good. Because even if she gets, actually no, because you're never gonna cast her. You're just gonna chord for her. and they're gonna go whatever, bolt you, and you go cord for 1. I gain 12 life.
Yeah, and even the cards don't have to be elves. Like, a Scavenging Ooze in the board is not going to make you sad.
Sure.
So, also a great deck to run Crows and Grip.
Yep.
And Grip. Choke should probably... Well, we're talking about Grixis. Might as well board into some chokes.
Yep. Oh, no, that's what... It's that just made me think of it. The card that I registered instead of Goblin King in the sideboard for the goblins at the PPTQ was Boil.
That's right. Yep.
And you know what? Boil's real good. Super good. So if you're looking for mass destruction, that is that. So I put a thing out on Twitter asking if there was anything that people wanted us to talk about in this episode. We had somebody come back and ask us to talk about Abbot of Carroll Keep, which is an Origins card. He's 1 and a red for a 1/1. Is he a 1/1 or a 1/2?
A 2/1.
He's a 2/1. Hot diggity dog.
Yeah, no, it's an aggressive body at a fairly aggressive cost.
So he is a 2/1 with prowess for 1 and a red, and he has basically Outpost Siege, or he is Chandra 0, basically
the new
tacked
red
onto
draw
him.
effect.
So when he comes into play, you exile the top card of your library, and you can play until the end of turn. You can play it. This guy, originally I was like, okay, like he's cool, and then I pulled one at the pre-release, and I was like, man, like it just got like stuck in my head, and I've been trying to find a home for him, and I haven't quite found it yet. In older formats, he's even better. Like if you put this guy in Vintage, or even in Legacy, I think he gets better because the spells are like cheaper and more powerful. But even in Modern, like you having card advantage and a threat, and like a threat that scales for 2 mana is really good. And I haven't found a place for him yet.
Right. So the awkward thing is, really all you want him to do is draw you a card, which he almost does. The problem for me is the prowess body without haste and the ability is what ends up making it awkward, because its actual body wants you to cast spells on your turn, the turn he's able to attack, yet his ability wants you to cast something right now. And so for the card advantage purposes in Modern, really this guy, like, Jund doesn't want it because it already has it with Dark Confidant. Grixis doesn't want it because you have Snapcaster.
Right. So
Burn is the obvious first include. And we've talked about this before. We have earlier. I think it can replace Grim Lavamancer in the decks that run him, which is only like a 2 of anyway, but I think that's fine because neither card gets really exceptional until late game. Like, you want to stick him early and then have the threat of him, especially against like Delver opponents and small creature opponents. But Abbott goes in pretty much the same spot where you're not really spending cards to do extra effects.
Right.
And it does have the benefit of, like, if you exile a land and you didn't land for turn, you can play it, and now you're not drawing land next turn. So there are definitely some upsides to this card, and I think it does slot into Modern Burn fine. I don't know if it's a 4 of. And there is some disagreement between, like, what his body says and what his ability says.
Sure.
And it's awkward to make them work together, because to work the best, you already need to be ahead. You need to have excess mana, like at least a 3rd land, maybe a 4th.
Yep.
And then be able to cast the spell, and then next turn still have a handful of spells to make his body relevant. And in that scenario, you're probably already winning.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm still working on it. It's rattling around in my head. But yeah, Grim Lavamancer 2.0 in certain decks is probably his first landing pad. Somebody requested Days Undoing Brews. At some point in the future, we will do a Days Unbrewing episode.
You did it.
I did it. Yeah, I did it. I did it off the air, and I did it on the air, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Days Unbrewing. I don't know that we probably will just do a segment. I don't know that we need to do like 2 hours on Days Undoing Brews. So coming soon. Stay tuned for that. One of our listeners just tweeted in response to that, Hallowed Moonlight is the real deal. And I am inclined, yes, at 3 Bean Soup. Hallowed Moonlight is the real deal. Well, I hope and assume that you are correct, because I just spent $30 and 7 hours getting beat up by Twin, and I really could have used a Hallowed Moonlight.
I mean, anytime Hallowed Moonlight's doing it, Rending Valor is just going to do it better. I guess, like, it...
Well, no.
Non-green, non-red decks needed an answer. I mean, this card makes me sad because of the whole collected company spiel.
Right.
But
it is good.
No, it's very good. The card itself is very good.
3 Bean Soup is correct. It is the real deal. So go out, buy some Hallowed Moonlights.
I have a foil I need to get rid of.
Do you really?
I do.
It's so funny because I was listening to some other podcast today, and I feel extra bad because I can't remember which one it was. But we were totally vindicated by other people pointing out how terrible Sword of the Animus is. So, confirmed.
Yep.
We were right. Everyone who said Sword of the Animus was good is wrong thus far. We've yet to be proven wrong.
People are saying, oh, it'll be good in Standard if Landfall makes a comeback, in which case, maybe, because you're getting an extra Landfall trigger if you have, like, a permanent in play.
Sure.
Which is not wrong.
Yep.
But
and you know what? As a turn 5 play...
right, yeah. What are you doing here?
Right.
You're playing Hedron Crab. Then next turn you're playing Sword of the Animist, and the next turn you're equipping Sword of the Animist and attacking with Hedron Crab, which is what Hedron Crab always wants to do.
Yep. He's got a super aggressive 0/2 body.
1/3 with the sword. Also picturing a crab with a sword, just crab walking across.
I like it.
Some battlefield and lands falling down.
That I like.
Yep. Yeah. The mental picture is great.
Somebody give that crab a sword. Yeah. So it's still terrible, and yep. So that is what is going on. Did you have anything else before we wrap this bad boy up?
I don't believe so.
All right. So, thank you as always for listening. If you would like to email us, you can do so at thoughtseizeu@gmail.com. You can holler at us on Twitter at @T1Thoughtseize. You can visit our website, TurnOneThoughtseize.com, all spelled out. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, MTG Cast, directly from our website, RSS feed. And I feel like I'm forgetting somewhere.
I don't think so.
That's everybody. Big shout out, as always, to our friend casts, the Masters of Modern, Girlfriend Bracket, Tolarian Community College, Tap and Sack, MTG Focus, and everyone that I may have forgotten because it is very late. Until next time, remember, kids, feel bads have split second.